Welcome to Sleepy Expeditions. Something has the herd uneasy tonight. You have been riding this circle for 2 hours, and you still do not know what it is. Could be a wolf somewhere, out in the dark beyond where the lantern light reaches. Could be the pressure in the air, the specific heaviness coming from the northwest that cattle feel before a person does. The barometric change that arrives in an animal's chest before it arrives in a man's understanding. Could be nothing at all, which is sometimes the answer and is never satisfying, because nothing at all does not explain why 2,000 longhorn cattle are on their feet at 2 a.m. when they should be lying down. They are not running. That is the important thing. 2,000 head of Texas longhorn, and they are not running, which is the only outcome that matters at this hour. And they are giving you the specific restless attention of cattle that have not decided yet whether running is what the situation requires. Your horse knows something too. Peso has been walking his circuit around the herd's edge with his ears forward for 2 hours. The specific alert position that means he is tracking something in the dark that you have not yet identified. 3 months on the trail together, and you have learnt to read Peso the way you read the sky. When his ears go forward and stay there, the correct response is not to decide he is wrong. You have not decided he is wrong. The camp is a 1/4 mile behind you. 12 men in their bedrolls, sleeping the heavy sleep of people who have been in the saddle since before dawn, and who will be in the saddle again when the cook's fire brings the morning. The trail boss is asleep. The cook is asleep. The relief watch does not come until 4 a.m., which is 2 hours from now, which is a long time when the herd has not settled. Until 4 a.m., it is you and Diego and 2,000 cattle that have not yet decided what they are going to do. A cowboy on night watch does not wait for things to happen. He waits for things not to happen. The difference is everything. Find a comfortable position. Let the imaginary sway of the saddle settle into your body. The slow rhythm of a horse walking at night, the creak of the leather, the warmth of the animal beneath you in the cool October air of the Texas plains. Close your eyes. The herd breathes. You left San Antonio in July. The drive assembled over 3 days in the yards south of the city. The longhorns brought in from the brush country ranches, 2,000 head sorted and road branded and turned onto the trail in the specific organized chaos of a cattle drive beginning. The trail boss rode the length of the assembled herd 3 times before he was satisfied. The cook loaded the chuck wagon with 4 months of provisions because you plan for 4 and hope for 3. The crew of 22 mounted up in the specific early morning dark that drives always begin in, before the heat of the Texas July became something that needed to be reckoned with. 800 miles to the railhead in Abilene, Kansas. The Chisholm Trail runs north from San Antonio through the Indian Territory and across the Kansas line, following the specific geography of water and open country that the trail bosses worked out in the years after the war. The route that gives cattle enough water without the crossings that drown them, and enough grass without the settlements that contest the passage. The trail is not a road. It is a direction, a general intention of northward movement modified daily by weather and water and the condition of the cattle. The first week was the hardest. The longhorns from the brush country are not accustomed to being driven. They are accustomed to the specific freedom of open range in South Texas, the country where they have been running without management for generations. The thorny brushland country where a cow can disappear into the chaparral and not be found for a year. Taking those cattle off familiar ground and pointing them north produces the specific resistance of animals that do not understand what is being asked of them and have the temperament to make that lack of understanding felt. There were 3 attempted breakbacks in the first week, the cattle trying to return to the range they knew, the specific herd instinct of animals that recognize familiar country behind them and unfamiliar country ahead, and make the calculation that familiar is preferable, the cowboys turning them, the specific riding that a breakback requires, getting ahead of the leaders, pressuring them north, the herd following the leaders the way herds follow leaders. After the first week, the cattle accepted the drive, not enthusiastically. Longhorns do not do anything enthusiastically in the direction a human wants, but with the specific resignation of animals that have learnt the routine, that know the rhythm of the day's movement and the evening stopping and the night's rest, that have come to associate the cowboys and the chuck wagon and the particular smell of the remuda with the daily pattern of their lives. By the end of the first month, the herd had become its own thing, not the collection of individual cattle from different ranches that it was at the start, but a herd with a specific character, a specific dynamic, the dominant animals having established themselves and the other cattle having organized around them in the way that cattle organize. 3 months of this, 3 months of the same rhythm, the morning start and the midday graze, and the evening camp and the night watch and the morning start again, repeated until the repetition became the only time that existed, the life before the drive, something that happened to a different person in a different world. Kansas is 2 weeks away, 2 weeks of trail, and the herd is sold, and the crew is paid, and the specific thing that has been your entire existence since July is over. But first, tonight. Tonight the herd is on its feet at 2 a.m. and Peso's ears are forward and the northwest sky is wrong, and you are riding your circle trying to understand what the cattle know that you don't. The herd breathes. The Texas longhorn is a specific animal with a specific history, and understanding the animal is part of understanding what is happening tonight. The longhorn descended from the cattle that Spanish missionaries brought to Texas in the 17th and 18th centuries. The Iberian cattle that formed the foundation of the Texas range, cattle that were turned loose or escaped into the brush country of South Texas and lived without human management for generations. The brush country shaped them. The thorny, harsh, unpredictable environment of the Texas coastal plains and river bottoms produced, over generations of natural selection without human interference, an animal that is not like any domesticated cattle breed. The longhorn is alert, not the trained alertness of a horse or a dog, the wild alertness of an animal that survived in country where the threats were real and unpredictable, and the response to threat needed to be immediate. A longhorn that did not respond quickly to danger did not pass its genes forward. The longhorns that are on this trail are descended from the ones that survived, which means they are descended from the most alert, the most responsive, the most likely to read a change in the environment and react before the change becomes a threat. This is useful, and it is dangerous. Useful because a longhorn herd that is paying attention will detect a wolf or a storm or a prairie fire before a human observer will. The cattle are a collective sensory system, 2,000 animals each contributing their individual perception, the aggregate awareness of the herd exceeding what any individual member could achieve. When the herd pays attention to the Northwest deserves attention. Dangerous because the same hair trigger responsiveness that makes the longhorn a good alarm system also makes it a stampede waiting for a reason. 2,000 animals bred for rapid response to threat held together in the dark by the singing of two men on horseback. The threshold between restless and running is lower in a longhorn than in any other cattle breed. A sudden sound, a flash of light, a smell on the wind that the cattle do not recognize. Any of these can be enough to cross the threshold. The herd decision to run emerging not from any single animal's choice, but from the specific collective dynamic of a prey species under perceived threat. You have been watching that threshold all watch. The northwest edge cattle are standing with their attention directed outward, their weight on their forward feet, their horns oriented toward the dark. They are close to the threshold, not at it, but close. The singing is the distance between here and there. Night watch on a cattle drive runs from dusk to dawn, divided into shifts. 2 men at a time, riding circles around the herd in opposite directions, one clockwise, one counterclockwise, the geometry producing a continuous coverage of the entire perimeter. The riders meet at the same point on each circuit, the specific intersection where the clockwise and counterclockwise paths cross, and they exchange whatever needs to be exchanged, a word about the state of the herd, an observation about the weather, sometimes nothing at all, just the specific acknowledgement that both men are present and the circuit is continuing. The circuit takes approximately 20 minutes to complete. In 20 minutes, you cross every point on the herd's perimeter once. In the 20 minutes between crossings, each point is covered by the other man's circuit. The result is that no part of the herd goes unobserved for more than 10 minutes at any time. 10 minutes is not a long time. 10 minutes is longer than a stampede takes to start. This is why the circuit pace matters. Why the night watch walk is the walk it is. Slow enough to observe, but continuous enough that the coverage does not lapse. A cowboy who stops to rest on night watch is a cowboy who creates gaps in the coverage, and gaps in the coverage are where stampedes begin. You have not stopped to rest. The circuit has been continuous for 2 hours. Diego comes around from the south every 20 minutes with the specific appearance of a man who has been doing this longer than you and who carries the accumulated patience of that experience in the way he sits his horse and the way he looks at the herd and the way he does not say more than is necessary. He came around 40 minutes ago and said, "Northwest has been up since before I started." You said, "Same." He looked at the dark beyond the northwest edge. He said, "Listening for something." You said, "Or smelling it." He nodded. The specific nod of a man who knows that cattle have access to sensory information that humans do not, and who has made peace with not knowing everything the herd knows. He continued his circuit. 20 minutes later he came around again. He did not say anything. He looked at the northwest edge. He continued his circuit. This is the night watch. 2 men and the herd, and the dark, and whatever is in the northwest that started this. Peso has been your horse for 2 years and 3 drives, and the relationship between you has developed into the specific thing that develops between a man and a horse when they spend enough time together in conditions that matter. He was difficult at the beginning. The trail boss gave him to you at the start of your first drive together, having watched you ride 3 other horses in the first week, and having made some calculation about the match between your riding and this horse's character. The calculation was not obvious. Peso was a horse with opinions, and the opinions were frequently different from yours, and the first 3 weeks of the drive were an extended negotiation between his sense of what the situation required and your sense of what the situation required. The negotiation resolved in his favor more often than you expected. Not because you deferred to him, because he was right more often than you were. The cattle that Peso wanted to approach differently than you planned to approach them turned out to require the different approach. The direction Peso wanted to move when you were checking on a distant part of the herd turned out to be the direction where something needed checking. The specific stops he wanted to make that had no obvious purpose turned out more than once to have a purpose that became clear later. A horse that has been working cattle for years develops a knowledge of cattle that is not available to a person who has been working cattle for years, because the horse is lower to the ground and quieter and reads the cattle from inside the herd's own perceptual world in a way that a mounted human cannot. Peso knows things about cattle that you do not know. Tonight he knows that the northwest edge is wrong. His ears have been forward since before you took the watch. You could tell from the way the previous rider handed him off, the horse already alert, already tracking something in the direction that the cattle are now tracking. You let him set the pace on the northwest part of the circuit. He slows there. Every circuit at the northwest edge, Peso slows to a pace below the normal watch pace, his attention going outward into the dark, the way the cattle's attention is going outward. He has not told you what is there. He does not know in the way that knowing works for a person. He knows in the way that a horse knows, directly through his senses, without the intermediate step of language or concept, or the specific human habit of turning experience into information. There is something in the northwest. Peso is sure of it. The Texas plains at night in October are a specific environment. The heat of the Texas summer is gone. The specific brutal heat of July and August on the open prairie. The heat that radiates from the ground after dark, on the hottest nights, that makes the night watches of the early drive as physically demanding as the day's riding. October has ended that. The nights are cool now, the temperature dropping into the 50s after dark. The specific clean cool of the plains in autumn that is different from the cool of any other landscape because there is nothing to hold the warmth. No trees, no buildings, no topography. Just the flat prairie releasing what the sun gave it, until the heat is gone, and what remains is the specific clarity of cold flat air under a large sky. The sky is very large out here. In the cities there is always something vertical, buildings, trees, hills, that limits the sky to a portion of the overhead. On the Texas plains, the sky goes from horizon to horizon without interruption, the full dome of it visible, the curvature of the earth apparent in the distance of the horizon, and the specific wideness of the visible arc. At night, under this sky, the stars are something else. The Milky Way is overhead, the galactic arm of which this solar system is a part, visible as a band of light from south to north across the zenith, the specific density of it here in Texas, where there is no city light for 100 miles in any direction to compete with the sky. You have been riding under this sky every night for 3 months, and it has not become ordinary. Some things resist ordinariness. The Milky Way over the Texas plains at 2 a.m. in October is one of them. The grass is buffalo grass, the specific native grass of the southern plains, short, dense, the colour of dry straw in October, the colour that it has been since the summer heat took the green out of it. Buffalo grass has been growing on these plains since before there were buffalo to be named after. The specific ancient grass of a specific ancient place. The grass that fed the bison herds that the longhorns have replaced. The grass that will still be here when the cattle drives are a memory. It smells like itself on a cool night. The specific dry smell of prairie grass in October, not the green smell of spring grass, not the cut smell of hay, but the specific dormant smell of grass that has done its growing for the year and is waiting for what comes next. You know this smell. You know it the way you know the smell of the chuck wagon's coffee, and the smell of saddle leather, and the smell of the specific combination of cattle and dust and open country, that is, the smell of the cattle drive itself. Tonight the smell is changing. The northwest is bringing something different. Moisture in the air that is not from the cattle, or from the grass, or from the specific dry chemistry of the prairie at rest. The air from the northwest smells of rain that has not arrived yet, of weather that is coming. The cattle smell it too. The singing on night watch has a specific purpose and a specific history. The purpose is simple: to let the cattle know where the rider is without startling them. A horse and rider moving around the perimeter of a herd in the dark is an object that could be mistaken in the specific limited perception of a cattle's night vision for a predator. The singing distinguishes the rider from the predator. A wolf does not sing. A mountain lion does not sing. The specific low human voice moving around the perimeter of the herd at a consistent pace and volume is a sound that the cattle learn to associate with the watch, with the continuation of the normal night, with the presence of the people who mean the night is proceeding as it should. The songs themselves are not important. Any song works. What matters is that the cattle know this voice, this rhythm, this specific sound. Over the course of 3 months on the trail, 2,000 longhorns have heard you sing every night of the drive. They know your voice the way they know the sound of the chuck wagon bell, and the way they know the sound of the remuda moving in the morning. The voice is data. The data says the watch is present, the night is normal, the things that would cause the watch to stop singing have not happened. When the watch stops singing, the cattle notice. This is why a cowboy who falls asleep on night watch, which happens, which has always happened, which the trail bosses know happens and account for with the rotation of the shifts, creates a specific risk. The silence is information. Silence from the direction where singing should be coming from is information that the herd processes immediately and not always correctly. You have been singing for 2 hours. The Red River Valley, home on the range, the specific catalogue of songs that 3 months of night watch has worn smooth. The words no longer quite words but sounds, familiar sounds, sounds that carry no meaning to you anymore because meaning has been replaced by function. The Northwest Edge cattle are not fully responding to the singing tonight. Normally the singing settles them within a few circuits. Normally a restless cluster of cattle calms when the singing approaches and passes, the familiar voice confirming that the night is normal. Tonight the Northwest Edge cattle are listening to the dark more than they are listening to you. Something in the dark is louder than your singing. Not audibly louder, you cannot hear it, but more compelling to the cattle's attention, more immediate, more real in the specific reality of an animal whose survival has depended on paying attention to exactly this kind of signal. You ride the Northwest Edge and sing and watch. The herd breathes. The Northwest Edge has been the problem since the first hour of the watch. You took over from the previous riders at midnight, 2 men who handed off the circuit with the specific brevity of a watch change on a cattle drive. The information exchanged in a few sentences because the night does not pause for conversation. They said the herd had been settling well. They said the weather to the northwest looked like it might develop into something. They said Peso had been earning his keep. Within 30 minutes of the handoff, the northwest edge was up. You noticed it from the south side of the circuit. The specific change in the silhouette of the herd at the northwest edge, the shift from the low rounded shapes of lying cattle to the taller angular shapes of standing cattle. You moved to that side of the circuit. The cattle there had their heads up and their attention outward. You looked into the northwest. The sky there was different from the sky in every other direction. Not dramatically different, not the obvious darkness of storm clouds blocking the stars. A subtler difference. The stars near the northwest horizon were fewer than they should have been. The light reaching them through something thin and diffuse. The specific attenuation of starlight through cloud that is not yet thick enough to produce darkness, but is already thick enough to filter. The air from the northwest was different too. Heavier, the specific quality of air that has moisture in it, that has travelled over wet ground or through precipitation and carried the moisture with it across the distance to here. The dry October air of the Texas plains is specific in its dryness, and when something different enters it from any direction, the difference is detectable. The cattle had detected it. They were not reacting to the weather itself. The rain was still far away. The specific front that was going to arrive and eventually settle the herd was still hours out. They were reacting to the precursors of the weather, the pressure change, the moisture in the air, and whatever was moving ahead of the weather in the dark, using the cover of the approaching cloud and the change in wind direction to get close to the herd without being clearly identified. Predators learn to use weather the same way cowboys learn to read it. You have ridden the northwest edge circuit more times than the other three sides tonight. Peso wants to be there. Every time you complete a circuit and reach the northwest section, his pace slows slightly, his attention goes outward, the specific gravity of whatever is in the northwest pulling at his senses. You let him slow, you sing, you watch. You have been in 2 stampedes. The first was on your second drive, a year before this one. A lightning strike, the specific sudden violence of a close lightning strike on an open plain at night, the light and the sound arriving together in the way that a close strike makes them arrive, the interval between them too small to separate. The herd was at the threshold before the sound had finished, the electricity in the air something that cattle feel before the strike itself, the specific pre-lightning sensitivity of animals whose ancestors have been on open plains under open skies for as long as there have been plains. 2,000 cattle ran south. The specific thunder of a stampeding herd is unlike any other sound you know. It is not just sound, it is ground vibration, the hooves of 2,000 large animals striking the earth at full speed, transmitting their energy through the ground, the way an earthquake transmits its energy. The specific low frequency that you feel in the soles of your boots and in the bones of your legs before you hear it. You rode ahead of them for a mile, not trying to stop them. You do not stop a running herd by riding in front of it, not at full gallop, not with a horse that is running on adrenaline and the specific terror that a stampeding herd produces in the horses who are near it. You rode ahead of the leaders with the intention of eventually turning them, of getting far enough ahead that you could angle across their path and push the lead animals into a curve, the curve eventually becoming a circle, the circle tightening as the cattle followed the leaders around it, the running momentum converting into the circular movement that slows a stampede. It took 6 miles. 3 cattle found the next morning with broken legs. the specific injury of an animal that has fallen at full speed on uneven ground. The second stampede was on this drive 2 months ago at a river crossing. The cattle did not want to enter the water. The specific reluctance of range cattle for river crossings, the animals that have been pushed into swift water before knowing what swift water can do, and the animals that have not been pushed into swift water before picking up the fear from the ones that have. The pushing began at the back of the herd, the riders behind pressing the cattle forward, the cattle in the middle passing the pressure forward to the cattle at the front, the cattle at the front entering the water reluctantly, and then the pressure from behind exceeding the reluctance at the front, and the leading cattle going in. Then a surge at the back. Something spooked the rear of the herd. A sound, a movement, something that came out of the brush along the riverbank, and the rear of the herd surged forward, and the middle of the herd surged forward, and the cattle at the front who were in the water lost their footing in the surge, and the river took them downstream, and the herd broke into pieces. 5 hours to gather. 4 cattle not recovered. A stampede is over in seconds and costs days. This is why the night watch exists. The northwest edge is not at that threshold. It is closer to it than it was an hour ago, but not there. The singing continues. The herd breathes. Diego has been on cattle drives since he was 15 years old. He is 34 now. 19 years of drives, the specific accumulated experience of a man who has been doing this long enough that much of what others have to think about, he has stopped thinking about and simply does. The reading of the herd, the reading of the weather, the specific knowledge of when a situation is approaching a threshold that requires action, and when it is a situation that patience will resolve. He was born in South Texas to a family that worked cattle before there was a cattle industry in the way that there is now a cattle industry. He learned night watch before he learned to read, not because his family did not value reading, because the cattle drive season and the school season occupied the same months of the year, and the cattle drive paid and the school did not. And a family that worked cattle made the calculation that families that work cattle have always made. He has tried to teach you things without quite teaching them. This is his way. He does not instruct. He does not explain. He rides near you when something is happening that he thinks you should observe, and he observes it himself, and the observation is the teaching. Over 3 months you have learned more from watching him work than from anything any trail boss has told you directly. The thing you have learned most clearly is this: the cattle know things. They know things before you do, and they know things you will never know. And the job of the night watch is not to know what the cattle know, but to know when the cattle know something, and to respond to that signal with the specific tools available to a man on horseback in the dark. Song, presence, patience. Diego came around from the south 40 minutes ago and stopped beside you at the northwest edge. Both of you looking at the cattle, both of you looking at the dark beyond the cattle. The wind from the northwest reaching both of you, the moisture in it detectable. He said, "Smells like rain." You said, "Coming from behind whatever is out there." He looked at the northwest edge cattle. He said, "They'll settle when the rain gets here. Rain usually does it." He continued his circuit. You stayed at the northwest edge for another full circuit before moving south. A sound from the northwest. Not close. The specific distance of a sound that has travelled across flat, open country at night. Arriving diminished but clear. The cool, dense prairie air carrying it further than it would carry in the day. A quarter mile, maybe more, the specific low sound of an animal that is not cattle, and not horse, and not any of the sounds of the camp. Once, then silence. The northwest edge cattle moved. Not the thunder of a stampede, not the surge, a tightening, the specific sudden clustering of prey animals that have confirmed what they have been suspecting for 2 hours, the distance between individual cattle closing, the herd reducing its perimeter, the animals pressing together in the way that animals press together when the threat has become real enough to respond to. You were already moving before you thought about moving. Hazo had shifted toward the northwest edge at the sound, the horse's response preceding your instruction, the two of you already in motion toward the place where the decision was being made. You started to sing, not the Red River Valley, something lower and without specific words, the continuous low hum that carries across a herd as the song carries, the sound that says the watch is present and the night is normal. And if the thing in the northwest were as bad as it seems, the watch would be doing something other than humming. The cattle held the threshold. The teetering quality of a herd on the edge of running. You have felt it twice, and you are feeling it now. The specific suspended quality of 2,000 animals balanced between staying and going. The outcome depending on what happens in the next 30 seconds. You rode slowly along the edge, still humming, not speeding up. The pace of the watch unchanged, because a changed pace is information, and the information it carries is wrong. The nearest steers held, the ones at the back of the northwest cluster, the animals furthest from whatever was in the northwest and closest to the rest of the settled herd, began to lose some of their rigidity. The weight shifting back, the heads still up but the necks not as tight. The sound did not repeat. Whatever it was, wolf, coyote, something smaller moving through the dark ahead of the weather, had made its sound and gone silent, or moved away, or decided the herd was too large and too watched to be worth approaching further. The northwest edge cattle held the threshold for another 2 minutes. Then the threshold moved. The cattle did not cross it. The crisis was in the northwest for 3 minutes. Then it was not a crisis. The stampede that does not happen makes no sound. This is its nature. The rain arrives the way prairie rain arrives in October, without the dramatic build-up of a summer thunderstorm, without the specific violence of the weather systems that swept through in July and August, and required the crew to hold the herd against the wind and the lightning for hours at a time. It arrives as mist first, the air from the northwest, which has been heavy and different from the prairie air for the past 2 hours, thickens into the specific fine mist that precedes rain, not quite precipitation, not quite fog, the boundary between the two states, where water suspended in air and water falling through air lose their distinction. You feel it on your face. Cool. Very fine. The specific sensation of moisture on skin in the specific quality that mist has. Not the discrete impact of raindrops, but the continuous presence of water in the air. The skin becoming aware of it gradually. The face registering the moisture before the mind has decided whether it is raining. Peso's ears moved. From the forward position he has held all watch, the alert position, the position of a horse tracking something in the dark, to a lower position, not the full relaxation of an unconcerned horse, but lower, the specific repositioning that means the thing he has been tracking has either resolved or changed character. The northwest is no longer what it was. The rain is what it is now. The cattle on the northwest edge began to shift, not toward the camp, inward, the movement away from the northwest that the cattle have been building toward, the specific decision of prey animals that have assessed a situation and found that the situation has changed. The thing in the northwest is gone, or less present, or less relevant than the weather now arriving from the same direction. The cattle that have been standing and watching and keeping the watch on edge for 2 hours are turning their backs to the northwest and pressing into the body of the herd, the clustering that had been about the threat now converting to the clustering that cattle do against weather. The instinct to find warmth and protection in the proximity of other large bodies. The northwest edge cattle are moving inward. The crisis is over. The rain is beginning. The northwest edge is lying down. The sequence of it is the specific sequence of a herd settling after extended restlessness. Not all at once, not the sudden mass lying down of a herd that has been at rest for hours and is deeply settled. One animal at a time. The first one down, the specific awkward motion of a longhorn lowering its body to the ground, front legs folding at the knees, the massive front end going down first, then the haunches following, the animal settling onto the grass with the specific sound of a large body finding its rest, then the animal beside it. The one nearest the first down animal watches for a moment, the calculation visible in the posture, the weight shifting back, the tension leaving the forward legs, the head coming down, and then it goes down too. Then the one beside that. The sequence moves through the northwest edge the way settling moves through a herd. Not a wave, not as regular as that, but spreading. The animals near the ones already down see the posture of rest and make their own decisions. Each decision making the next decision slightly easier. The settling building its own momentum. You watch it from the circuit. Peso's ears have come down. Not to the fully relaxed position of a horse at rest. He is still working, still on the circuit. The watch is not over, but down from the forward alert position he has held for 2 hours, the horse registering the change in the herd with the same accuracy with which he registered the problem at the beginning of the watch. The problem is resolving. The northwest edge that was the problem is lying down in the rain. The night watch does not celebrate when the herd settles. The watch continues. The herd settles and the watch continues. Diego comes round. He sees the northwest edge going down. He does not say anything. He looks at the cattle lying down, and he looks at the rain beginning to fall more steadily, and he nods the specific nod of a man whose prediction has proven correct, and who takes no particular satisfaction in the prediction being correct, because the outcome is what matters, and the outcome is that the herd is settling. He continues his circuit. The rain falls on the settling herd. The rain changes the smell of everything. The prairie in October, before the rain, has a specific smell. The dry smell of dormant buffalo grass, and the mineral smell of the soil, and the particular combination of cattle and dust, and the open country that has been the smell of this drive since July. These smells are present and familiar, and you have stopped registering them the way you stop registering any smell that is always present. The rain changes all of them. The buffalo grass first, the specific smell that releases when moisture reaches dry grass, the specific organic chemistry of a plant receiving water after weeks of dryness. Not the green smell of wet living grass, not the cut smell of hay, but something between them. The specific smell of dormant grass becoming temporarily present again as the moisture activates the compounds in the tissue. The soil second. Rain on dry Texas soil has a smell that is one of the oldest smells in human experience. The specific chemical reaction of water and dry earth. the release of geosmin from the soil bacteria, the smell that people in every culture, in every period of history, have associated with rain before they knew the chemistry of it. You know this smell from before you know anything else about rain. It is the smell of rain arriving, the sage somewhere to the west of the camp. There is sage on this part of the trail, the specific low grey-green plants of the high plains, more present here than on the southern part of the drive, the vegetation changing as you have moved north. Sage in rain releases the specific sharp resinous smell that is sage's signature, the smell that is more Texas plains than almost any other single smell you know. The rain has reached the sage, and the sage is responding. The cattle are responding too. Animals know the smell of their country. Their country smells different when it rains. The difference is not threatening. The rain is a familiar thing. 3 months of drives have included rain. The summer storms, the river crossings in the rain, the nights when the tarp over the bedroll was the difference between sleeping dry and sleeping wet. Rain is part of the drive the way heat is part of the drive and dust is part of the drive, and the specific smell of 2,000 cattle is part of the drive. The cattle know rain. The specific calming effect of rain on a restless herd is something that experienced cowboys know but rarely explain, not because it is a secret, but because it is the kind of knowledge that arrives through observation and is difficult to put into words that someone who has not observed it would find useful. Rain settles cattle. Not always. Not if the rain comes with lightning and thunder, which provokes the same response in longhorns that lightning on the open plains provokes in any animal. But rain without lightning, steady rain, the specific light rain of an October cold front moving through, this settles cattle. The northwest edge is settled. 2 weeks to Abilene. The calculation has been the same for 3 days. The trail boss making his assessment each evening at the fire, looking at the map, looking at the cattle, looking at the weather. 2 weeks is a calculation that accounts for the condition of the cattle, which are trail-worn but not failing, and the condition of the country ahead, which the trail boss knows from previous drives, and the condition of the weather, which no one can know for certain, but which the trail boss reads with the specific accuracy of a man who has been reading it for 20 years. 2 weeks, if the weather holds and the river crossings go well, and nothing happens that changes the calculation. Things happen. This is the specific knowledge of a cattle drive, that the plan is a plan, and the plan is not what happens, but the plan is still necessary, because without a plan there is nothing to deviate from, and deviation without a reference point is not deviation but chaos. 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, the cattle enter the holding pens outside Abilene, and the buyer comes to assess them, and the trail boss negotiates the price, and the price is agreed upon, and the cattle are sold, and the drive is done. The crew is paid, the specific pay of a cattle drive cowboy at the end of a successful drive. Not much by some measures, more than nothing by the specific measure of a man who has been living on beans and salt beef and coffee for 3 months and who has no expenses because there is nowhere on the trail to spend money. You have been thinking about what to do with the pay, not decisively. The thinking is more like a horizon, something that exists ahead of the present work, something that becomes relevant when the present work is done. The present work is the night watch. The present work is the northwest edge, which is settled now. The present work is Peso's circuit around the herd in the rain, the singing that has been continuous for 2 hours, the specific attention to 2,000 cattle that has been the entire content of the night. The pay is something else. 2 weeks is something else. The drive is the present. Everything else is future or past. The rain falls. The relief comes before 4 a.m. You hear them from the camp before you see them. The specific sounds of 2 men beginning the morning in the dark. The sounds of a cattle drive camp coming alive for the minimum necessary time and then returning to sleep. The bedrolls opening, the boots pulled on in the dark. The movement to the remuda, the specific sounds of horses being saddled by feel. Then hoofbeats, 2 shapes coming out of the dark at the pace of horses moving carefully through a settled herd at night. The specific slow approach of riders who know that arriving too fast near settled cattle is how you unsettle them. Wilson and Harmon, they stop beside you. The exchange is brief. You tell them the northwest edge. Restless all watch, settled when the rain arrived about an hour ago. A sound from the northwest at 2 a.m. Animal not identified. The rain coming from the northwest, the same direction as the sound. The rain having settled what the sound had unsettled. Watch the northwest edge for the first hour of the watch. Habit more than necessity, but habit. Harmon looks at the northwest edge. The cattle there are down. He reads what down means in this specific context. Not the settle down of a herd that has been at rest all night, but the recently settled down of cattle that have been up and watching and have made their decision within the past hour. He reads this in the posture of the cattle, in the specific way they are lying that is slightly different from deeply rested cattle. He nods. Wilson is looking at the northwest with the attention of someone who has been told to look at the northwest. The deliberate attention that experience eventually replaces with automatic attention. The watch is theirs. You turn Peso toward the camp, and he moves without being asked. The horse who has been doing this for 2 years and 3 drives knows when the circuit is done and what the direction of the camp is, and the difference between the pace of the watch and the pace of a horse going back to the rope line. The rain falls on your back as you ride toward the camp. The camp is quiet. The bedrolls are dark shapes in the rain. The canvas darkened by moisture, the shapes of sleeping men barely distinguishable from the ground beneath them. The chuck wagon stands in the dark, with the cook's fire banked under the wagon cover against the rain. The remuda rope line is 30 yards from the wagon. The horses standing in the light rain, with the specific patient quality of horses in weather. You unsaddle Peso at the rope line, the cinch loosened, the saddle lifted clear and carried to the pile. The blanket draped over the saddle, the sequence done in the dark and in the rain by the same hands that have done it every night of the drive. The sequence worn into the hands the way any repeated motion wears into the hands. Peso shakes himself when the saddle comes off, the full body shake of a horse releasing the accumulated tension of hours under saddle, and hours of alertness, and 2 hours of tracking something in the northwest dark that resolved, eventually, into nothing more than rain. He goes to the rope line. You go to your bedroll. The ground receives you. The canvas is wet on the outside and dry inside. The specific protection of canvas that has been well laid on ground that shed the rain before it pooled. The interior dry by the specific good fortune of a bedroll placed correctly before the rain came. You are inside it. The rain falls on the canvas above you. The specific sound of rain on canvas is low and steady and continuous, not the sharp sound of heavy rain, the specific soft drumming of the light rain that has settled in for the remainder of the night and the early morning. The sound that will still be here when the cook's fire brings the camp to life. The sound that will still be here when the herd begins to move north. The cattle are 200 yards away in the dark, breathing, The enormous collective breathing of 2,000 animals at rest. The specific sound that means the watch did what the watch was supposed to do, that the night proceeded through its crisis and out the other side, that Wilson and Harmon now have a settled herd in the rain, instead of the restless herd that you took over at midnight. 2,000 cattle breathing in the October rain. The northwest that held something for 2 hours is now just northwest. The direction from which the rain came and continues to come. The direction of cold air and moisture. The direction of Kansas. 2 weeks to Kansas. The drive is almost done. The drive is almost done, and the cattle are breathing, and the rain is falling, and Peso is at the rope line, and the relief is on the circuit, and the night is almost over. Let the rain fall on the canvas. Let the canvas hold the warmth inside. Let Wilson and Harmon ride their circuits in the rain. Let the cattle breathe in the dark. Let Kansas be 2 weeks away. Close your eyes. The herd breathes. Sleep now. The morning will come when it comes.